if this dream scenario plays out and you have Florida State and Clemson and you have a legitimate claim then to making it like a power 3, I mean, at least close to it, power 2.5 maybe, in college football. Who else would you grab? Like, what else happens with the ACC? I think that is a really intriguing question. Like, how big do you want to go at that point? Are we assuming that everybody else is on the table from the ACC? Some of that is tough because it would depend on, like, I feel like there's just a lot of dominoes that have to fall there. Like, if the exit fee is going to be manageable enough for a bunch of teams to leave, then I would imagine that you're going to have the SEC go in and poach like North Carolina and Virginia. I guess maybe in this scenario, it's like Florida State and Clemson are going to leave. The Big Ten and the SEC don't want them, but the SEC is going to go snatch up Virginia and North Carolina. Conference is basically dissolving there. Then do the exit fees like go away? It's hard for me to pin down like what is the exact scenario where the Big 12 is able to go scoop up like an extra 2 to 4 schools. I know we had like Eddie on the other day saying the Big 12 needs to get to, was it 24? Maybe Eddie had suggested that they need to get to a bigger number, split it off into 2 divisions. I know a lot of people really like the idea of that. I'm just saying the money has to make sense because I don't know that there's enough private equity money to go around necessarily. Maybe there is. I don't know if there's enough to cover the exit fees of like 6 schools out of the ACC and then still be able to pay Florida State and Clemson like they're a Big Ten or an SEC school here in this sort of scenario. But I guess if there is, I wanted to bring you this tweet that I saw out there from a radio interview in Louisville that Jason Scheer did. And my apologies, man, the way I copied this, I did not get the radio station's name. This is my bad. Louisville radio station. I am very sorry. This is bad work by me. I owe you one for this. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. But they had Jason Scheer on, who you saw on the channel earlier this week, by the way. And Jason Scheer, if you are unfamiliar, covers Arizona for Wildcat Authority. He was the one that had the tweet earlier this week that said the Big 12 is very optimistic that they are going to get Clemson and Florida State in the next year or so. Jason Scheer apparently told this Louisville radio station that the Big 12's top candidates following Florida State and Clemson would be Miami and Louisville, followed by NC State and Virginia Tech. That's a really nice list, okay? So according to Jason Scheer, the Big 12's list would be Florida State, Clemson, and then after that, Miami, Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech. I mean, Miami's a no-brainer for number 3 here. If we are talking about shoot your shot, right? You're not going to get North Carolina. I don't know that Virginia would do the Big 12 a whole hell of a lot of good, and they're not coming either. Miami seems to be in like I always thought that was like a, maybe loosely realistic, but like probably not. They're a tough read. The football brand, I know it's old, it's aging, it's been in the fridge forever. Miami's just been tucked away in the back of the fridge behind an old jar of pickles for like, 9-10 months at this point. And there's some stuff growing on it. And you're like, but what's there? Like the remnants of it are still there. Pretty good brand, man. I mean, you'd want to take Miami. You'd certainly want to take Miami if you could. Louisville has always been like the most obvious one to me. They were very close to being a member of the Big 12 at one point in time when the league was going through the TCU West Virginia cycle. They have a very good historic basketball program. We'll see about it getting turned around right now, but that's a definite fit from that standpoint. Geographically, I guess we can say it still makes sense. I don't know, damn near anything with the Big 12 at this point would theoretically make sense, but the roots of the Big 12, Louisville makes sense from a geographic standpoint. I have always thought that was number 1 on the list, but the way I was viewing this 2 weeks ago was that Louisville would be like the realistic list. They're easily number 1. And now it's starting to look like, all right, I mean, maybe Florida State, Clemson, and Miami are all in the category too. NC State and Virginia Tech, that's also nice. I mean, you go back a couple of months, especially with the North Carolina legislature stuff, like everything that we were talking about with maybe legislature is the wrong word. Some of it, I guess, legislature, but Board of Governors, everything politically happening in North Carolina. The combo was about, like, is NC State going to be able to go with North Carolina? Will they be able to staple themselves to the Tar Heels and get wherever they want to go in the Power 2? So it's kind of like, all right, well, that may not really happen. I think NC State's pretty damn solid. Virginia Tech, kind of the same way, and that's a big fan base. You're getting into a pretty big area. Not that market size really matters all that much anymore, but at least in terms of bringing in what appears to be a pretty big and proud fan base, you can do that with Virginia Tech too. Man, I don't know. I really like this. I like this list a lot. Whereas, again, a couple of months ago, I was thinking, yeah, I mean, Louisville, I guess you probably go grab Pitt for the backyard brawl, like West Virginia rivalry. And like, that's fine. I'd be happy for West Virginia in the backyard brawl. Other than that, Pitt, it's fine. And I thought, like, NC State and Virginia Tech, maybe. I had high hopes for Duke at one point in time because of the basketball value add that you could be giving to Brett Yormark to try to make something out of there. I think that ship has definitely sailed. And, we talked to some folks here on the channel, like Andrew Carter, who really threw some cold water on that. I don't think that is happening, but that's a nice list, man. I mean, think about that league. Even if you just stop at Miami and Louisville, dude, if it's Clemson, Miami, Florida State, Louisville, so that's a nice haul. That's a nice haul. We're starting to talk about this being a pretty legitimate little conference that the Big 12 would be throwing together. Here is what Brett McMurphy said, by the way, about all of this. If we're thinking about the dominoes starting to fall here and making this happen, I didn't mention that earlier when talking about McMurphy's report, which was more about the SEC and Big Ten for Florida State and Miami. But he said if the Big Ten and SEC aren't options, the Big 12 would seem to be a potential landing spot, sources said. The only problem, Florida State and Clemson aren't currently that enamored with the Big 12. But then again, neither were Utah and Arizona State until they saw the Pac-12 crumbling before their eyes, and look where they ended up. Desperate times call for desperate measures. That's so true. And I think that would basically go for this entire list. Everybody here, Miami, Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Clemson. I don't think there would be a soul in there who would be really fired up about coming to the Big 12. At least in this last round of realignment, it seemed like Colorado and Arizona were, kind of fired up about coming to the Big 12. Coach Prime certainly seemed fired up at media days in Vegas, right? Like there seemed to be some legitimate excitement around that. Not so much for this group, but hey, Utah's here. I saw it with my own two eyes. Cam Rising was in front of all of us at Big 12 media days. Like I know that they were there. They're in the conference. They came. Arizona State, they're here. Kenny Dillingham was there. They're in the conference because they basically had to be. And if that's going to be the option and the only way that you can really survive this is going to be by far your best option in all of this, then the schools will have no choice. So I'm not surprised to see that kind of be the sentiment from McMurphy's story. And he's exactly right about the reality of that sentiment. Now, as far as some of the logistics of this, how this would break down, I want to show you this, which I thought was really good from Greg Flugar. If the ACC grant of rights and exit fee is ultimately set low enough to which multiple schools find it economically plausible to bolt, and the conference completely implodes, it'll create media company inventory issues that could entice an expansion of the Big 12, SEC, and Big 10. So I guess, yeah, the idea there being like if ESPN is losing all of this ACC inventory, and it's just going away, like they'll need to recoup some of that somewhere. They are obviously in bed with the SEC and the Big 12. So, hey, get some schools over there. Let's kick the inventory over there. Make sure that we can keep that up. We'll give you the money to add these schools. And bada bing, bada boom, there you go. And then the Big 10 piece, I guess if there's just expansion happening there, the Big 10's not going to want to get left behind and try to pick up what they can too. Then if the other scenario, if the ACC grant of rights exit fee number becomes prohibitive, the number is set at a high enough number where there won't be a line out the door, the ACC stays intact, and there won't be a feeding frenzy of expansion. And Greg points out, those who insisted Florida State to the Big 10 deal was done 1 year ago find themselves in the strange position where it could still happen, but only at the result of the Big 12 becoming more valuable and cementing themselves into Power 3 status through more expansion, which I think is very true. And that's why I said earlier, like, guys, the way this is playing out right now, whether it is the scenario of Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Louisville, Virginia Tech, NC State, or not, whatever it's going to be, the Big 12's sitting pretty right now. From where we thought this was going to be, from what we thought the best case scenario was last summer when we went through this Pac-12 saga, man, this feels good. You can kind of kick back and say it's good right now. Possibility of it being great. There's certainly a lot of upside there with private equity in Florida State and Clemson, even if there is a bunch of risk too. There's a lot of upside, and you could take that chance if your mark can pull it off. But if not, then we're still good. We're still going to be okay. And we may be landing some of those second-tier ACC schools, and then we're legitimately, no questions asked, like we are the conference that survived. We are the third league. We are the best of the rest. And say what you will, make fun of us. We've got good basketball. We've got really fun football and solid football. We're going to have access to a playoff spot to at least be able to make some noise. This is a hell of a lot better than it looked in late July 2021. Remarkable again that we are here. Don't lose sight of that, everybody. Do not lose sight of that.